When the co-host of a paranormal podcast starts listening to mysterious recordings, she finds herself at the target of a supernatural entity. This one is set inside a single house and, unsurprisingly, lets the audio take center stage. So join us as we discuss Undertone. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Ole Tep.
Did you actually put effort into seeing what Hello Peter what would be backwards?
I mean, effort is a strong way to phrase it. I
Because I heard Retep there, and I was like, okay, I think that was my name backwards. All right, very good. So this is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a movie. It's that simple. And this week we are looking at Undertone, a movie that came out earlier this year, and focuses all around someone listening to recordings as part of a supernatural podcast, which. We'll start spoiler free. I'll say that first. We'll give you warning before we get into the spoilers, as we always do. You can support us on Patreon, hit the like button on YouTube, all that stuff. I'll tell you more about it at the end. But I will say, because so much of this was about a character doing a podcast, it left me getting oddly annoyed at weird things that that just felt off to me. Like, sure. you know, Tim, how sometimes we like to just record the podcast in 10-minute chunks, like over 4 sessions in a week. Like that. I was like, what is this? This is maddening.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess a peek behind the curtain, but yeah, if people don't know, we'll usually record for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then Pete will say, "Are you okay?" And then I'll say, "Yeah, can we just pick up in like 4 days?" And you're like, "Cool." Like,
and I'm like, "That's just you're just giving yourself so much to like edit and stitch together." Oh, it was maddening stuff. But
I mean, like, obviously, you know, things happen sometimes that you can't control, so sometimes you might have to wait a day or whatever. But yeah, like you're saying, the way that it would seem to happen like every time, and yeah, that it just, well, you know, it does not feel like the best way to do a podcast.
Well, what got me is, one, it happens multiple times, but two, it was it's the way it was like. It's not like anything big happens that gets in the way. The character just says, "Oh, it's getting late. Can we continue this like another night?" And I'm like, "You started 10 minutes ago. Like, you stayed up to do this, and you're like get thrown in the tubble 10 minutes in. It feels a little bit." I don't know. It was very strange. But hey, that's maybe just coming from the perspective of someone who actually sits and records podcasts and was just finding that very, very odd. I did laugh though that they both hit record on their audio software though, and I was like, because I make Tim do that, so I was like, oh hey, that's a real thing. That's something that happens. So that's fun. So yeah, I mean the premise of this is that this main character named Evie is staying in a house with her very sick, comatose mother, but she records a supernatural or paranormal investigative podcast with her friend Justin, who lives in a different country now, and they get sent a batch of recordings labeled 1 through 10, and sort of slowly they listen to them, and you know, the spooky things might be on them, and so there's, you know, Evie's kind of the skeptic. She tries to debunk things, and it goes from there to some places. So we'll get into stuff as we go, but yeah, I mean, like, I like the trailer for this one. I'll say that much, right? You know, when I first saw the trailer for this, I was like, oh, this is a neat idea. I can see kind of like how this would become a cool little movie where it's like, oh, it's all set around just like one character hearing these things and like, you know, discovering stuff. I guess I was expecting kind of like a, obviously not in the same, told in the same style, but like I was expecting kind of like a similar kind of structure to, say, like an Unfriended, where it's like you're sitting at the computer, you're discovering more stuff, things are getting creepy, and it builds over the course, almost in real time, which is probably my biggest surprise of this movie, is that it's not real time. As we've joked about, we go to new days where another 10-minute chunk of the podcast is recorded, so there's actually time passing in between a lot of this stuff, which did surprise me. But anyway, Tim, what did you think of Undertone?
So, like you were saying, I also thought this had a pretty good trailer, and I remember being pretty psyched for this one. I think it was like one too where it's getting a lot of hype and people are saying it was like, oh, this really scary and creepy, and like unnerving, which, but we hear that plenty of times, so we know that, you can't always like trust it when, people are saying that, but sometimes that does get me hyped a little bit. And then I will actually say I do love like the premise and like everything behind it. Like I like when like people can take like one thing and then really like in this case just like the idea of, oh, let's really like play, well, I guess I should say like my thinking was that they're really going to play with sound and audio and find really creepy ways to interact with it. So I was pretty disappointed when I feel like that wasn't the case. Like I don't know, I feel like they really didn't live up to the premise. I feel like a lot of the, I guess, quote unquote like creepy stuff or whatever is like super generic. Like I was joking about it in the beginning, but I can't believe how much of this was just like, oh, if you play this backwards, they're saying something. I was like, okay, that was like, it's such like a big part of the movie, and like after a while, I was just like, okay, this is just like, we've all heard that thing before, like, oh, you play a record backwards and there's a satanic message or something. Like, it's not new or interesting. And then we'll get into it later in spoilers, but I feel like a lot of the stuff that we end up learning about just is just very generic, like horror stuff where it's just like, oh, like here's this ancient demon thing and here's the deal and blah blah blah. And then the other thing that I was not really looking forward to was that, again, before it came out, I was kind of excited, and then one of the things that made me cool on it, and was one of the reasons why I didn't really rush out to theaters to see it, was like, you mentioned like the taking care of the elderly mother angle and stuff, and so I did kind of get worried that, like, oh, is this gonna be a movie that's about like grief and trauma and stuff, which I don't mean to be derogatory, like obviously that's not like an instant negative on a movie. Like there's plenty of movies that that deal with those topics, and that's great and everything, but it is just one of those things where it seemed like for a while we were getting so much of these like horror movies that were metaphors for grief and trauma and blah 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 that it doesn't necessarily make me excited. Like it can still be good. Like I'm not gonna steer away from a movie because of that, but it was one thing that I was like, okay, I'm a little less interested if that's gonna be the big takeaway, versus like, oh, we're just gonna be listening to spooky audio files or whatever. And I guess to the movie's credit, though, I don't think that stuff was as big as like I was hearing people talk about it online and stuff. Like it's definitely a part of the movie, but I wouldn't say it's like the biggest part or whatever. So I guess I'll give it credit for that. But I don't know. It's not the worst thing in the world. Like I think it looks pretty good, and the performers are fine, but at the end of the day, I don't think it really did anything that interesting. Like again, I was like hoping that we were gonna get like some cool, unique ways they're gonna play and interact with sound, and I don't really think there's anything like that going on here. But how did you feel?
Well, I'm a bit mixed on it. Like I think there's
much like an audio file.
Oh, okay, as in like sound mixing. Very good, right? Congratulations, Tim. You made a joke. I'm a bit mixed on it. I think that there is some good direction in here, right? There's kind of this thing that the camera's constantly doing, which is making you focus on the negative space in the shot and looking at the darkness and be like letting your mind kind of like, almost as if you're like paying attention to the darkness because you think something might be there, and you're kind of almost on edge looking for the things that may be there, and it's very reserved in that sense. Like I think well, I don't necessarily dispute that some of the things that it goes into is kind of generic. I do think it's it's a lot more reserved than a lot of movies in the sense that I think, and maybe this is just because it was a super cheap movie, you know, and when I say cheap, I just mean low budget. I maybe that helped sort of stop them from doing things that would annoy me in other movies, which is there's no big CG thing jumping out and there's not like over the top visuals. Like things are very, very, very pared back and grounded, and it's really simple things. And I think that was to the movie's benefit.
Sure.
I like the premise and the setup of what this is, but when I said I was expecting it all to be set in one night, I was kind of disappointed it wasn't. I thought that was part of what was intriguing to me, was kind of it building over the course of just them on this call throughout. So that was kind of a weird pivot for me. But honestly, the bigger thing for me is just the way that it dishes out all of the actual lore and like creepy information, and just how on the nose and relevant it seems to be for what's actually happening throughout the plot of the movie. It was just all a little bit, I don't know, just, I don't want to say convenient, because I actually think this is a movie that has a lot of like theorizing that can be done with it. There's definitely some ambiguity, and there's like, you know, I had a quick look online and I was definitely getting some vibes, and it feels like, yeah, some people have taken the ball and ran with the idea of like, you know, how much of this is reliable, how much of this could be in someone's head, how much of this could mean this, how much of this is actually this happening, and so on. There's a lot of theorizing, and that's fine. Like, I'm not necessarily like against that, but the actual like dishing out of the information for me was very just uninteresting, I guess. Because it was, like you said, just like, oh, we're going to play this song backwards. Oh, do you hear that? Do you hear this message that's in there? And what could that mean? And that's why I'm saying mixed, because I actually think that while it was doing that, it was doing some really cool shots. And I was like, oh, I'm actually impressed with like the overall aesthetic of this moment and how it's making me very aware of the geography of the house. I know where the stairs are. I know where the room with the mum who's sleeping, where she is. And I know, you know, this, and this. Like, I know all these things. But ultimately, when it was, you know, it's like, oh, we're talking about this potential demon or this potential threat or this potential whatever. I'm like, oh, like, it feels like everything that comes up is going to be relevant later. And I'm almost annoyed by that, because I feel like there should be some other things here. Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it was almost a little bit too like movie-fied and neat, when I think maybe like, I don't know. Again, I can't really say what my problems are here without getting into spoilers, so I'm being vague and talking around it. But ultimately, I found myself really disconnected from the story it was presenting, even though I like kind of the basic building blocks. And as far as the whole taking care of the sick parent thing is, I didn't know that was in the movie at all, so I was like kind of taken aback when the movie starts with that, effectively the opening scenes about that. And I was like, oh, we're doing this. Oh, and I was a little bit disappointed. I was like, okay, I guess this is going to be a part of this.
Again, if it's something that's handled well, like, I mean, that's totally fine if that's part of the story. I don't know. I really didn't feel like it was needed in this.
Well, like, I think for me, it's a twofold thing. One, I thought I was going to have a bit of fun with this, and that immediately was like, oh, this is a downer. Okay, we're doing a downer movie.
Right.
But two, it's more just that, like, it's very clear, and this is going to sound like a weird complaint, because obviously things in a movie should thematically be relevant to the point of the movie, right? That's something that should be there. That should be a thing. But the second...
Well, that's debatable.
No, it's not. It absolutely should be a thing. However, the second that what they're talking about on the show starts talking about mothers and kids and stuff, I was like, oh god, it's just, everything's just tied into like her and her mother who's lying upstairs. I guess it was just so on the nose that it just like, I want to be able to piece it together a little bit, I guess. And there's no piecing together because it's so blatantly there. That it's and then there's other stuff that's so vague that like it's almost unsatisfying how vague it is because it's not really giving you something concrete. So yeah, frustrated. Like not a bad movie. Like it's clearly going for something. It's clearly got some aspirations. It's trying its damnedest to do something, and they did it with very little money. There's some nice stylistic choices, like the only characters you ever see are Evie and her mother. Everyone else is just a voice, whether it be your co-host or a caller or whoever it is. So that's an interesting stylistic decision, is to like never see anyone else other than our two main characters. And one of them is not really a character. One of them's practically a prop, played by an actor.
Well, what about there's like a scene with like a doctor or a nurse or...
You don't see them?
No? I thought they like came and visited. Oh wait, no, I guess she was just on the phone, huh?
No, I think the nurse you're talking about, I think, is in the house, but we never see them. We never see their face. We only hear them, and we only see Evie in the scene. We never see the other person.
Oh, okay, you got me. All right, well played, movie.
Tim, I want to say everyone should be thankful that Tim didn't try and become a detective, because... Right, continue.
I think ultimately I'm negative on this movie, but I agree. It's not the worst thing in the world. Like, yeah, I wouldn't say like...
I want to be clear. I'm not saying this is a bad movie, but I don't think I liked it very much.
Yeah, like it's not like there's absolutely nothing redeeming about it. Like I agree with what you said. Like I think maybe the biggest thing going forward is the direction, and I would say that probably held my interest for, I don't know, about maybe like the first half hour or so, and then it did kind of start to wane once I kind of realized that, okay, I think this is what the movie is. We're not going to be building up or doing something maybe a bit more interesting that like I'm hoping for. So yeah, it is I think like you said, like kind of like unsatisfying or maybe a bit frustrating, but yeah, certainly not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think either it should have went further, I guess, but I think for me, I actually wanted it to not go further. I kind of want it to be more restrained, but obviously it's pretty restrained in terms of the visuals here, right? Which I really appreciated, but it's not very restrained in terms of like just the characters on the podcast, like Evie and Justin. They just start like talking about stuff, and he starts bringing up these examples, and everything's relevant. Every single thing they bring up is relevant in some way. And again, technically that's good for a movie, but it's so to a point where, because it's presenting at this era of mystery, like we're not supposed to know where it's going, that it was almost a little bit trite, because I'm just like, yep, this is all going to be a thing for later. And I just, in a way that just, I don't know, the script, I guess, is just a little bit too cute. That's maybe my, if I weigh somewhat my critique, the script is too cute.
Sure, yeah, definitely could have used some work. I mean, I don't know if people might think this would have been like more boring or something, but I like you're kind of saying before, like I was hoping that this would all be like, in one night, and yeah, that we're like, it was mostly going to be like, just kind of them, or the main character Evie, like just pretty much sitting at her desk or table or whatever, just doing the podcast and listening, and just really like limited in that space and area, and then again just maybe letting like a lot of the sounds and stuff like make it eerie or whatever, which might sound crazy to some people, like, oh wait, talk about like that would be even more boring or something, but I don't know, like I guess I was hoping for maybe something more like that, or I mean, not like that, like she can't get up and get around and stuff, but like you were saying, when they break for lot time, and then it's a new day the next day, it does feel like you're kind of taking the momentum away a little bit.
Yeah, I wasn't really fond of that aspect of it. Also, I think the recordings they listened to could have just been better. Like, they could have just been more interesting.
Yeah.
It's effectively, just playing out something that you've seen in another movie. Just we're hearing about it instead, and that's fine. Like, this should effectively, what this movie's trying to present is an audio drama with one main character who's our only thing we see, and we see her reaction, we see this stuff, and I was looking forward to kind of that element of it, but sadly I think the stuff to listen to is mostly kind of dull, and as soon as they start talking about stuff being played backwards and stuff like that, you know, like that's where I'm like, okay, this is more gimmicky than I think I was hoping for. So
yeah,
hey, that's what it is. So the main character is played by Nina Kiri, who I recognize because she was in The Handmaid's Tale, in a supporting role. And then the voice of Justin is Adam DiMarco, who I only know from recently because he was in Something Very Bad Is Going to Happen, the Netflix miniseries.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that one yet.
So, obviously the mother who's in the coma is also an actor here, Michelle Duquet. I'm going to assume that is a French Canadian name, but I could be wrong. And then other than that, it's very Frasier Crane. It's just a bunch of voices, right? Now there's no hidden celebrities like Frasier used to have, but yeah, just a bunch of voices for the rest of the credits. But that is the cast. That's what it is. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else to talk about without spoilers, to be honest. Because most of it is spoilery. Like, I don't think we can talk about too much before we get into spoilers. So, I mean, the ending is definitely going to be divisive. I'll say that. I think half the people who see this movie are going to hate the way it ends.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And I'm not saying I hated the way it ends necessarily. I think in theory I appreciate what they were trying to do. I also don't think it lands.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded it if I was more into the movie leading up to it. Like,
yeah, if you were more invested, yeah,
like, you know, there's a movie I want to compare it to, but again, I don't want to do spoilers or whatever. But there's another movie that it made me think of, and you know, with that movie, it's like, oh, well, that one totally earned it, and it's like a, you know, great, like, cherry on top to a great movie. Where this, it's like, okay, I don't mind what they're doing, but yeah, since I wasn't really into like the movie leading up to it, it didn't really have an effect on me. But I agree. I think there's a lot of people who, yeah, probably gonna watch it and be like, "What? That's it?"
Yeah. I can see the reactions. Like, it's one of those endings where you know it. So yeah. As far as that though, I feel like we probably do have to go into spoilers to really talk about any of this. So, yep, you can get this podcast every Thursday wherever you can find podcasts. I think that's what they said on the show, on the movie.
I mean, maybe I missed something, but I never had any idea of, like, you know, like, is their podcast supposed to be popular? Are they like, you know, like doing it as a career, making money off it? Is it just like a little fun thing they do every now and again? Like, they have people call in at one point, so I'm guessing it must be like, you know, they at least have some fans. But
I mean, that's the only indication that it is popular in any way, is the fact that people call into it when they do a live recording. Although I don't think it was being broadcast live. The implication I got was that they told people when they were recording so they could get call-ins,
right.
but they weren't broadcasting because they were still talking about editing things later. I'm like, okay, I guess it's not broadcast live then. It's just they're just like, they've told people to call in at this time and they'll take the calls. So fair enough. Yeah, very strange. There was also little weird podcasting things that were sticking out to me that was odd. But like, she kept saying, I mean, maybe this is a thematic hint, right, which we'll talk about in spoilers, but she kept saying, like, every time they sort of got off topic, they'd say, oh, let's get back into it. She would say, okay, let's get back into character. And I'm like, you're not really doing a character. I mean, you're doing, maybe get a slight presenter voice, but I don't know. I don't know if I'd say you're being a character on your podcast here. You know, it's not like Tim's a super different person before we start recording everyone. He's like, oh, he's got a French accent, and then all of a sudden he's like, okay, it's time to hone in the Tim persona.
Maybe her character is a bit more mean and annoying. It seemed like she could have been a little nicer to him sometimes.
She's the super cynical one who doesn't believe the supernatural stuff. That's kind of the gimmick. So I guess she's arguably playing that up a little bit more than she otherwise would. But all right. So I think we'll say spoilers then, so we can talk about it properly, and we'll jump around and talk whatever we like. So spoilers for Undertone. You have been warned. So where to begin here? We got a couple of nitpicks out of the way, right? Couple of silly little nitpicks, right?
Oh, go for it.
So at one point, Justin, the male co-host of the show, brings up this demon and some lore, right? Which ends up being the relevant demon for the whole movie.
Like Abzu or something like that?
Abazu, I think was the how they said it. And Evie, our main character, types it into Google. And she spells it correctly, right? And I'm like... What? How do you know how to spell that? That's not how I would have guessed how to spell it with a Y. That's weird. But okay, fine. The one that got me though is when the calls start getting weird and scary at the end. She stands up and says, "Justin, trace the call."
I noticed that. Yeah.
What the hell are you talking about? You're both sitting on Discord, taking Discord calls. What do you mean trace the call? Is Justin a policeman during the day or something? Is he the tech expert at the police force? Is there a reason why you think he can trace the call?
Keep him on the line. Check the IP address.
Oh, that was wild. What was the other? Yeah. So he's talking about the demon or the saint or the evil spirit, whatever it is, right? The Abazu. And he says, so there's this phrase that keeps showing up, which is come in Abazu or something to that effect. And he says, oh, the letters of the person who emailed me these files aren't as random as I thought. They're actually just come in Abazu backwards. Oh, I've done some research. I found a study about the phrase "come in Abazu backwards." A study about the phrase backwards, which had two subjects and two people who were involved. I'm like, what? That is so wildly specific. You've lost me, movie. I do not believe you that this study took. Even if none of this is real and this is all in her head and she's having a mental breakdown, which is definitely one of the possibilities. That's part of the reason why I don't see any other characters, even when someone visits the house, is because no, she's already lost her mind, and we're all just in her head, and she's dealing with the guilt over killing her mother or whatever it is. But we'll get to all the theorizing. Even if that's the case, this is so weirdly specific that it just took me out at the moment. Is him saying, "I found a study about this specific phrase being said backwards."
To me, it kind of felt like just one step removed from, the generic Google search scene. It's just we're not necessarily seeing the scene, but it's basically the same aftermath of that, where it's just oh yeah, I just conveniently, typed in the name of this demon, and the first result was some relevant thing that I'm going to now explain to you.
Yeah, and the frustrating thing is that if you're saying, oh, well, either this is all in her head and this is all just a bunch of nonsense anyway, so it doesn't matter. It still has to be compelling as they're finding it so that I'm invested in the journey of them going through these steps. Alternatively, if this isn't in her head and it is no, so this demon, because so basically, just to sum up what the movie's actually doing here, is that these 10 files are of a married couple who started recording when they slept because the husband wanted to prove the wife was talking in her sleep. But then creepy stuff starts happening. So they're basically listening to a version of Paranormal Activity, right? Yeah. Right? And it's okay, that's fine. But the idea here is that this demonic spirit, Abazu, is spread through, word, through voice, right? And the idea being is that listening to these 10 files will spread. So, which I think is funny that this guy gets sent this email with these 10 files, and I'm like, so it's a phishing email. It's a scam, but just the scam's to get a demon possession instead of, your financial details. But okay. So it's all right, fair enough. And that's kind of the...
I guess to be fair, he did say that he was kind of suspicious of him, and then he was but what the heck? I listened to the first one or whatever, so... at least it shows that he's not like, just completely unaware or whatever.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if the phrase "to be fair" should have been used there, right? He is hesitant. I mean, I'll give him this. He wants to stop. After like 5 or 6, he's like, hey, maybe we shouldn't listen to the rest of these. And she's like, nah, don't be silly. We've gotten so far. Let's finish them. Let's keep going. So that's kind of the basic thing. And by the end, it's revealed, or kind of hinted at least, that that's what's spreading this force into the house with our main character. And it's building throughout as they're listening to more of these files. So that's the gist of what's happening. Now, is it spreading to her? Is it spreading to her mother? I think you're meant to think it's spreading to Evie throughout the movie, but it's actually spreading to her mother, it seems, at the end. But that's the backbone of what is going on throughout this movie. And there's a number of hints to this, because all of these stories are about mothers and their children. All the kids' songs, the old kids' songs played backwards are all like evil sounding, and all these stories come from apparently like warning tales about children who were killed, so they go through all the classics. And it's like, okay, so it's setting up that we find out that Evie is so surprised she's pregnant at some point during this, and you're thinking about getting rid of it, and that's like something that comes up, and this demon's like goes after people who can give birth because she used to be a woman who couldn't give birth or something. Like they go into all this stuff. And that's like there. But I have to be honest, all of this, as soon as they started just bringing this stuff up during the podcast where he's like, oh, I've done some research. This was this demon lady who did this and did that. And that's what the song's about. Like, it just made me less interested in everything that was going on. Like, it was just, you're just spoon feeding me information that wasn't that compelling. Now, what was compelling is her sitting there listening to some of this creepy stuff, and like, you realize that some of the sounds sound like they're not in the recording anymore. It sounds like they're in the house, and she's like starting to kind of feel them as well. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of effective. That's kind of creepy. Like, what's going on there? And like I said earlier, the use of negative space where you're looking at the shadows constantly in the corners. Is there someone in that doorway? Is there someone over there by the stairs? And 99.9% of the time, there is nothing. And you're just looking for it, but you're kind of on edge because you're kind of, you're expecting something and you don't want to be caught off guard, so you're looking closely, and it's effective. It works. But yeah, all the lore stuff, all the stuff with the recordings as it went on, and then honestly, the last like 10 minutes of it, especially where it gets really wild as the call-ins stuff starts happening. Like I was kind of losing track at a certain point. I'm like, okay, like I've kind of lost the plot here as far as like who's calling in at this point and like what they're adding to the overall mystery of like what's going on. But anyway, I'm rambling. Tim, you give some thoughts.
No, I mean, I'm in a similar boat. Like what was kind of hooking me in the beginning was again kind of the the possibility of like what's going on, and then just a lot of the good direction, like even before they kind of get into the calls, just like it's like so quiet and them just talking, and then cutting to like all these random stuff around the house. There was just kind of like a creepy feel to it. Like it was well done, but it just, to me, it just takes such a nosedive once they get into all the lore, because I did not care about it at all. Like you said, it's uninteresting, like the way they dish out the information, and then the information itself, again, it just feels like such a generic standard. Like I know this isn't like like a big Hollywood horror movie, but it kind of like the Abazu monster, like granted we don't see it, but it does feel like the kind of thing we would see in that movie that would have like a big CGI jump scare that was all bullshit and stuff. And like, so it is kind of weird the way it's mixed, because like, the direction and stuff doesn't feel like that kind of movie, but like the lore to me like does kind of feel like the kind of thing you would find in one of those movies. And just the more you learn about it, the less interested I became.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is just Justin, like, oh, I've just looked this up. Here, listen to this. Mm-hmm. And like just him telling us stuff. Like that's so much of how the information is actually conveyed. And like listening to recordings sounds like is what the movie should be about, but like maybe be less just the generic paranormal activity type story, which is effectively what we hear is like, because they're asleep and they constantly do this thing where Justin's playing the sound file and then he's like, all right, this is them saying goodnight before they go to sleep. I'm just going to skip ahead to where the bump is in the audio file on the sound wave, which makes sense. Don't get me wrong. Like, you don't have to listen to all the silence, but it's like, it feels like there's no sense of discovery here because you're just jumping to like the interesting bit in a way that just, again, feels very paranormal activity in the way that would fast forward until the relevant bit during the night kind of thing.
And so much of the recordings too, I just don't think were creepy. Like, so much of it is just, the woman speaking backwards in her sleep, which, is really not compelling. And then, granted, this isn't necessarily the movie's fault, but it was kind of funny to me because a lot of times I'll watch movies with subtitles on just because, I'm getting older. I don't always like hear everything. So I like to have them on as a backup just in case. And sometimes too, like I might watch these movies like, late at night when everyone's asleep. So I, sometimes I'll have the volume a little lower, just in case. So, I'll have that on just so I know what's going on. But if you do have the subtitles on, then like when they start talking, you can just easily see what they're saying backwards. So I was like, very quickly, I was like, oh, she's saying like, come in, this crazy word or whatever. It's like, very quickly, I was like, oh, this is like a backwards thing.
Yeah, I think the other problem with all of this is just that. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's weird for you with subtitles because you're like just having it in plain text. Is for me, like they would do this thing where they'd repeat like how, because Justin would be like, "Oh, did you hear that?" And she's like, "No, I didn't hear that." And he'd play it 3 more times, and I would still be sitting there going, "Yeah, I don't hear anything either. What are you hearing?" And then he'd have to say what it is backwards, and I'm like, "Oh, that's what you're hearing. I wasn't hearing any of that, but okay, all right, sure, I'll take your word for it. It's there."
That is funny because that is such a, like, if you ever watch any of those paranormal shows, like that is such a standard thing they do where, they'll have some like EVP, where they're like, oh, listen, we asked for like a ghost to tell us something, and then they'll play this thing back and it's just static, but they'll be like, wait, did you hear that? And then, it takes 3 listens and then they finally have to tell you what it is or whatever. But the thing I kind of found like annoying about that is, like, I think it's totally fine if that happens like once or twice, but it feels like every like time, he would bring it up, and then it got to the point where it's like, okay, we get it. Like, you're gonna say, "Did you hear that?" And she's gonna be like, "No," and then you're gonna say what it is or whatever, and like, it feels like they didn't really like mix things up enough. Like, again, I was hoping that there's gonna be like all these different ways to interact with like sound and everything, and yeah, it was just like the simplest things to do. It's like, oh yeah, you play something backwards, and or like there's like a some tone or something underneath that we listen to, but yeah, like it's not really doing anything that interesting or creative with it, I feel.
Yeah, so just to get into some of the specifics here of like stuff the movie does is that obviously all this stuff with the demons all about like kids who were killed and going after mothers of their children or making mothers kill their children. It's Evie calls her mama all the time, which is obviously very childlike. She also when she plays back this answering message that she got from her mum before she got sick, her mum calls her a baby girl. Throughout the movie, she starts like drawing with crayons as she's like recording the podcast just to keep her hands busy, which again is very childlike. So there's lots of signposts to say that she is the baby in the potential mother killing the baby, kind of, even though she's an adult now. So that's kind of there. When it comes to this idea that, oh, okay, what if we interpret this as this is a woman who's already kind of lost her mind, and maybe because later on in the film, when she kind of like has this weird confession moment during all the weird calls at the end, she says that she killed her mum, and you can kind of take that to mean, oh, like she's blaming herself for like not being there. She didn't pray for her mother because her mother's super religious, and she didn't pray for her like her mum asked her to, and that's led to her being sick. So that's what she means by she's killed her mum. Or you could read it as, no, she has literally already killed her mom, and everything with this podcast and all the stuff that's happening in this movie is her brain trying to tell her that she did something bad, and she's like, she's the skeptic because she doesn't want to believe any of it. That's maybe getting into a little bit of a Silent Hill-esque kind of inner brain kind of thought process, but the other things, they did set up a few other things, like, apparently she has a boyfriend / husband that she's kind of on the rocks with, who's not helping her with her mom. I think one of the big themes of this movie is this idea of if you're having to take care of your sick elderly parent who is, needing help, like, we literally see her have to, clean up after she's done the toilet and the bed and stuff like that. It's how kind of soul destroying that is, and how it feels that they are already dead and they are already possessed by someone else because they're not your parent anymore. They've become this, this husk, and how much that's weighing down on her. I mean, every single time Justin calls her to start the podcast, before they start recording, he always says, "Oh, how's your mom?" And she's like, "Oh, same." So is this burden of looking after your parent, like, I think that's a big thing going on here. And then maybe the guilt of, like, because she even says at one point, "Oh, I kind of just want it to be over," which is basically her saying she could hurry up and die. That would actually be kind of beneficial at this point. So there's the guilt element of that. So there's a lot of things. Like, the movie's setting up a lot of things, and it plays with a lot of things that are consistent throughout. Arguably maybe a little bit too many, and arguably some of them are a little bit too on the nose for my enjoyment of them. Especially since as soon as they start talking about this demon, it's all about, mothers and kids. It's all about, this possession that makes mothers, like, kill their babies, or they hide the fact that they have a baby, and then the baby turns up dead, and like that, like, this is what all the stories that are related to this thing are going to be. So this is the stuff that the movie's playing with, and I, like, honestly, sometimes we go through a movie roughly in order. I don't think I could go through this one in order, because I try to remember where we learn certain parts of this, because obviously all of it is them sitting at a computer talking, so try to remember the order of all this information would be impossible to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to it, because, ultimately it is just, mostly sitting down, listening, and then every now and again you take a break and stuff. But then even, it's not like much is happening, in between those times or whatever. But yeah, like, I don't know, like, I get what the movie's, like, going for with, all that stuff you're talking about, like, all the stuff with the mom and then and her and everything, and I'm not against it. It's just I don't think it was necessarily handled in a particularly interesting or satisfying way here. Like, I don't know, maybe it's a bit too, like, half-assed. Like, either focus on that a bit more, or just set it to the side and, like, let's just really do the creepy audio file thing. But
I don't think half-assed is the right word. I think if anything, it just feels like biting off more than could be chewed. It feels like the director, who is the director also the writer. Let me have a look. See here. Ian Tuason, or Tuason, however you say his name. Like, he wrote and directed this, and it feels like he's putting a lot of stuff in, stuff that he probably cares a lot about, but it's maybe just a little bit too much, or it's a little bit just, it needs a couple more drafts, a bit more refinement, I guess, because, and maybe this is partially a taste thing as well, but it does seem to have a fairly divisive response. Like, I think some people do quite like this movie, and people are enjoying theorizing about it. I think for me, I wasn't drawn into kind of the atmosphere enough, and, like, what the character was going through enough to the point where, as it was, like, doing more stuff to sort of add to the mystery in terms of not so much the spooky stuff, like, because obviously, some lights flicker or whatever, right? Spooky shenanigans. She has, like, do you know what? To its credit, it does the fake out with the dream thing, but because it's such a simple thing of just seeing her, what's supposed to be her comatose mother, standing in a corner, Blair Witch style, I actually found it quite effective, even though she woke up from it, because I'm like, you know what, that was just really simply creepy. It wasn't, like, over the top. It wasn't some big jump scare or anything like that,
Yeah.
So I could appreciate that element of it, but I was almost like annoyed when it started doing more stuff that was clearly going to be setting up like what's this movie really about? Kind of like, oh, we're going to like bring up the fact that she's having a kid, now she wants rid of the kid. We're going to bring up the sister with the mom and the praying, the idea that her mother's overly religious, which, if anything, that felt maybe a little bit undercooked as well, given everything else going on. Yeah, maybe there was just one or two elements too many to kind of the overall character stuff, and because of that, they felt a little undercooked as a whole. I don't know, just focus in on one or two of them, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure. And then piggybacking off some of the things you said, I'm not necessarily against like a dream sequence if it's handled well. It's just one of those things where the majority of the time they're usually like just for like, a shitty cheap jump scare. But yeah, every now and again you'll get one that's like, oh, I didn't mind that one. That wasn't that bad. And then I could be wrong, but I feel like when this was coming out, I want to say like some of the reactions I was seeing is like I feel like I saw maybe some reviews or critics that were like, pretty positive on it. But then I feel like once it was like actually out, like the people like, actual real life people I know, when they started seeing it, a lot of like my friends and stuff were like, oh no, I didn't like it, or it's kind of, it didn't really deliver what I was hoping for. So I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean like that's a general consensus. Just like for me personally, I feel like I was seeing some like good reviews like online, but then like everyone I knew in real life that saw it was like not too thrilled with it. And that was one of the reasons why we didn't really rush to see it in theaters. I forget if it was one of those ones that had different release dates for us, but
this was like a month apart. We couldn't have done this if we wanted to.
Yeah, but I think I was like debating possibly just going out and seeing it because I was kind of excited for it, and then once I talked to some friends about it, they were like, don't really bother. I was like, okay, never mind then.
Yeah, I mean, some of the other things the movie does is that when we get to the call-in portion, which is the sort of like, oh, we'll do this last part to wrap up these 10 recordings, and they've only got 2 recordings left. They listen to like the 9th, I think, first, but then they go into the calls, and someone calls from the same town as Evie, right? Justin even points out it's the same area code. She's like, okay, we don't all know each other, so let's just move on. But he starts basically saying, hey, I recognize this couple on the recordings, this Mike and Jessa. I they were neighbors. They lived down the street from me. And, hearing this actually makes a lot of sense since they both turned up dead. And it's like, wait, they did what? And so he's explaining this stuff. And then Evie's like, oh, what street are you talking about? Because again, they're in the same town. So maybe she knows where this would be. But then obviously spooky stuff happens and he never gets to answer that question. I think one of the ways like you could start theorizing some of this is that these calls or not the calls, sorry, but the recordings are actually telling a story of something that already happened to Evie, just with a different name, maybe. Because there's also that weird moment in the last recording where it sounds like the woman in the recording, Jessa, says Justin, which is the name of the audio podcast host, as if this might have been them, maybe. It was just with different names, and this is like again some weird Silent Hill-esque, like afterlife / purgatory / whatever.
Mm-hmm. And then was there something where they were, was it the baby that they said? Because there's like they started talking about like that they killed the baby, or was it like did they put it like in a trash bag or something like that?
No. The trash bag was a separate caller of a woman who was like renting the basement. So this woman called in and said, oh yeah, when I was a kid, this woman rented the basement and we heard this banging downstairs, and it was the woman like hitting this bag against the furnace. Yeah. So that was like the second caller, I think, who told that story.
I forget. I think there was like someone though that mentioned something about their baby, and the baby's name was Mary, and then I think earlier Evie said that she was thinking about naming her baby Mary after something her mom called her. There's something like going on with like Mary or something. But I feel like that, could play into, your theory if, if this is all really about her.
Yeah. Well, I think because you get to a certain point in this movie, and it just feels like it's being just obscure enough with how it's like sticking to the house and not showing faces, and the tone. It feels like, oh, we're meant to be thinking about what this actually all represents, as opposed to just taking it at face value. And maybe, again, this is like an expectations thing, and like what I want out of the premise, I suppose, rather than like an actual problem. But I just don't know if I wanted that from this. Like, I don't know if I wanted the puzzle box. I don't know if I wanted the, oh, what does this story really mean? I mean, obviously it's fine to always have that, and it could have had that even if it was otherwise exactly what I wanted, but it feels like it's so much that, it's so much of it, oh, we're going to do all this mysterious stuff, and we're going to, like, have, these things that could be red herrings, that could be hinting at what's really going on, so on and so forth, that it becomes more about the what is it really, as opposed to we can enjoy the story for what it is. Because once all the calls start happening and she freaks out and she's yelling and she's hearing creepy voices in the headphones and she's saying stuff out loud, it's like, okay, we're just in supernatural territory. And also at the end, when she's going around the house, right at the start of the movie, when she first talks to Justin, he brings up this like creepy video that if you watch it, you apparently will end up committing suicide. And it's just this red video of a face that looks kind of creepy. And she watches parts of it and then kind of says, okay, I'll stop watching it. Quit whining at me to stop watching. I'll stop. Right? At the end of the movie, that appears on her TV, even though the TV's not plugged in. And it's like, oh, I guess that was also important. Like, are we saying that by watching that, it also opened a door for whatever's coming into the house? Like, that was the start of it, was that. And I think, I don't know, it almost bugged me that when that moment happened early on, when she watched that video, where I was like, oh, this is going to come back around in some way. And again, it's weird to like be annoyed that they've set something up that they're going to pay off, but I guess it's just so trite that I was just kind of like, all right, I guess we're just like signposting stuff in a really obvious way. I thought this was going to be more of like a vibes movie. Instead, it was like, no, we've come up with a bunch of possible lore with red herrings, and we're going to like just tell you all about it, and spoon feed it to you through all the podcasts. I don't know.
Like it might sound like maybe I'm being a bit more harsh than I might be on like other movies sometimes, but I think part of that does come from the fact that it feels like there was potential here, and then to me they just they fumbled it, like again, not in the worst way possible. Like, the end result is not like a piece of shit or anything, but it's just like, oh yeah, I feel like there could have been something really cool or special here.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that there's potential here, and I think we both saw potential in the premise. And it's quite sad, actually, how quickly you realize it's not the premise we thought it was. Like, as soon as they start talking about playing recordings backwards, I'm like, oh, okay, right, we're doing this, and we're talking about demons, and we're looking up stories of what this demon did in the past. I'm like I wasn't expecting that from this. We're effectively taking the research scene from another crappy horror movie, and we're stretching it out over several scenes almost to an extent. And again, it's a testament to the direction and the tone of it, no pun intended, that it's much better than that sounds, but it's very disappointing and not this great little like creative experiment. Like, I think that's my problem with it, is everything in the story does not feel that unique or creative. It feels very just kind of like, oh, we're doing a bunch of, you got the toolbox out of all the horror stuff, and you're just picking what tools you want to use, as opposed to, oh, I've got a cool idea of like how the idea of sound is going to play out through this movie as she's hearing things. Because it almost feels like it doesn't actually matter when she's not doing the podcast, the sound stuff. It doesn't feel like it's really playing much of a role as she's just in and around the house. Outside of like hearing her mum maybe like speak and then going in and seeing her, and she's still in a coma. Oh well, that was creepy. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm frustrated. I'm definitely frustrated. with this, because I wanted to like this, and I wanted this to be, I don't know, something else. And part of that's on me for just leaping to a conclusion as to what this should be and what I thought it was going to be based on the trailer. But nah, it's disappointing. I think that's a very good point. I think the potential here being kind of squandered on something that's taking kind of the easy tropes as opposed to doing something that was going to be kind of unique and inventive, is a shame. You know, because to describe the ending here, actually, because the one thing they do with sound, I suppose, is that the movie ends with sound, right? It cuts to black, but the movie doesn't end for like another good 20 seconds, and we hear some stuff. It's like forcing you to like listen closely to try and figure out what's happening. But some people are going to hate that because it's going to be really ambiguous. It's not very clear exactly what's happening. You know, when she goes upstairs and her mother's like walking backwards out of the bathroom at her, and then it cuts to black when she screams. You know, is the mother killing her because she's possessed? Is the mother being killed by her? Are they falling down the stairs? Because one of the quick little dream snippets earlier kind of suggested that there'd be a falling down the stairs and looking up at like someone standing there. Is that what's happening at the end? Right? You know, it's leaving these possibilities open. It's almost like it's kind of doing that thing where it's almost a bit of a cop-out, and it's like sort of pretending that leaving things open is like the smart thing to do, when in reality it just means they didn't have to make a choice. Like they didn't have to commit to something a bit more concrete, which is sometimes something that J.J. Abrams is accused of with the mystery box. Is like you think of the mystery, but you're not willing to actually do a satisfying answer that makes it all fit together. So you're just going to say, no, it's open. You think of what the possible answer might be. And sometimes ambiguity is the right answer, depending on what the theme of the story is. But here, I don't know if it actually served the story for this to be ambiguous. If anything, the ending might have helped shed light on what the rest of the movie was about. It being ambiguous after all of the, like, the teases and red herrings and, you know, all the other stuff, actually was just kind of frustrating, because it's like, well, now... like now I'm trying to piece together a puzzle where there's not even like the edges to like fit it inside of now it's kind of like so open that it's hard to kind of. And sometimes I like theorizing, sometimes I can be into that, but when I'm into it, it tends to be because everything else was so good that I'm into what the movie meant and what it was trying to say. Here it feels like a jumbled mess of 2 or 3 different things that it could have been saying.
Yeah, for me, honestly, like I kind of don't really care either way, but it's just because I was so checked out of the movie by then. Like,
oh no, I agree with that sentiment. By the end, I kind of didn't care anymore, and that's a big problem. That's why it's frustrating.
Like, in theory, I could see, kind of liking this, because it's like, sometimes I do like that, you know, theorizing kind of aspect, or, you know, sometimes it might be scarier or creepier just to leave things to your imagination. But again, it would have to be a movie that you're invested in. And by this point, I was just like, you know, okay, the movie's over. I'm not thinking about it that much.
Yeah, it's kind of like vagueness and mystery is just kind of like using that to masquerade as like, hey, aren't we being smart because we're being all, I don't know, vague about everything. I don't know. It feels like a cop-out here rather than something that's actually adding to the story, when something a bit more concrete might have made it all click together in a way that would have been more satisfying. So, and that's assuming it's sticking with the overall story that it's got. As it is, I think I just don't like the story of this demon that, you know, makes people kill their kids. Like,
that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, and it's not that I hate the concept of that. It's that I just don't think I wanted that from this movie, or the way it's presented. Certainly, I didn't like in this movie.
No, I agree. I think basically that's what it comes down to. Like, there's some good stuff here, some promising stuff, but yeah, at the end of the day, if the story isn't really clicking, there's, you know, not much you can do.
Yeah, I mean, there's some more, like, sort of digging into some specific scenes with the character if you really wanted to. Like, you know, the idea that Justin wants to call her boyfriend to give him a telling off for not helping her. her disappearing to go to a party that her boyfriend's invited her to and saying, I'll be back in a few hours, but then you smash cut to her arriving in the morning, and then she feels guilty instantly because her mum's lying on the floor somehow, which, I didn't think happened to people in comas, but I guess that's the point. It's, slightly creepy as well. Like, this idea of her avoiding things, again, fits thematically into potentially some of these theories that we're talking about. I don't know. As soon as I realized that everything was maybe unreliable, I just got less interested in what was going on, because sometimes that's the right choice. It is. Like, that's not inherently bad. I don't want to be taken in any way that I'm saying that. Sometimes unreliable is good. Sometimes ambiguity is the right choice and it can work. I don't think this script was good enough to have those things, and it's actually just frustrating. Its attempts to have those things are just frustrating to me and unsatisfying. So, yep. That's Undertone. All right, Tim, what are you rating Undertone out of 10?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's some interesting stuff. There's some possible potential, some promise, but ultimately it let me down. And, well, I'm not too negative on it. Like, I am falling on the side of not liking it. So, but again, there's, stuff there in the direction. The performances aren't bad. And I still really do like the premise, or at least like, the overlying kind of idea of it. So I'm not going to go super low, but I think I'm going to give it like a 4, which is like,
ooh,
yeah, it's certainly not the worst thing in the world. And yeah, I guess like there's enough stuff that it's like, okay, yeah, it's kind of interesting. And, I guess a lot of it, again, more is for the potential and some of the things there. But I mean, ultimately it was a letdown. Like, I didn't like it, but, it again, like we said before, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, certainly, it's not like, Passenger or anything like, that bad. That I wasn't like pissed off at the end of it, but it does suck that, it wasn't really what I was hoping for.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go quite into the outright negative with the 4. I think I'm probably going to land on a straight 5, which is me saying it's got things I don't like, but there's also things in there that I think are well done in terms of directing. Like, one creepy shot of like a figure in white standing in the background, for example, is very effective, and the use of negative space. I think that stuff is genuinely pretty good. But the story, where it goes, how obvious it's being with a bunch of red herrings or hints to what's coming later, I found very, very unengaging. So it's, I think overall I'm going with a 5 out of 10, which is straight down the middle, which is a shame, because, I wanted to like it. I wanted it to be better than that, but it is what it is. So yeah. Anywho, that's that. That is Undertone. So what is coming next week, you might ask, dear audience? Well, next week on the show, we'll be looking at Send Help. So we're going to Sam Raimi. Which means Tim's probably going to gush about it, regardless of what the quality is actually like. But we'll find out if I like it or not next week on Screams After Midnight.
How dare you? That'll be my 3rd, 4th time watching it.
Given the fact that it only came out in like March, that is a sign that you probably like the movie, Tim. I'm just going to...
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But of course, you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Help keep the show coming. Thanks to everyone who already does, but you can get access to the bonus Even More Stream segments, which we do most weeks. And that really adds up. We have a bonus episode that's either came out recently or coming soon on Doom Asylum. I say that because we've recorded it. I don't know if I've edited it yet by the time this goes out. I can't predict the future, but there's a good chance it's probably out by now. But but that's like episode like 65 of the bonuses. So there's a whole back catalogue of those. And then there's bonuses for the other stuff that I do with David, like, the sci-fi podcast or Collector's Cut. which just wrapped up John Woo season and did the Supergirl movies, and we're soon going into a submarine season, which I think is a fun theme. So,
cool.
Yeah, that's a thing that's happening. But there you go. That is the show. That is Screams After Midnight. So thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.